Meanwhile, we have a question from Treve White. Treve, what's your question?
There are 263 million children worldwide who do not go to school. 61 million are primary school children and 202 million are secondary school children. As one of only 20 national campaign champions for the Send My Friend to School project, I am acutely aware that £1 invested in development for international education generates £10 in benefits for the world's poorest countries. We believe, as a nation, we should be donating more money to the world economically, well, to the world's children, basically. What do you and your party think?
Treve. Well done, Treve. Thank you very much indeed. So 263 million children worldwide who don't go to school, 61 million primary school children, 202 million secondary school children. As a country, should we be donating more money to world education nationally? And this time we've come all the way full circle to Julie Jones-Evans, who's an independent, to answer first.
Thank you, Chief, for that question. It's actually something that's very close to my heart because my own grandparents were missionaries out in Africa and did this work. My grandmother was a teacher and my grandfather was a vicar. So they went out and did and preached and also helped teach children. So they knew how valuable it was because, you know, we have to come up together. You can't just leave people behind, and education is so fundamental to getting your social mobility raised. We have to help each other, and we have to help in a practical way, and also we need to make sure this money is being spent properly as well. Have that due diligence, because you do hear stories where funding perhaps doesn't go to where it should be. But yeah, water is another massive thing that, again, you know, because it helps young girls as well and boys. And I'm thinking about teenagers; they need to have that water. And if you haven't got water, you can't go to school. So that's really I do support water aid as well as the education.
Thank you, Julie. And straight on, please, to Nick Belfit.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think it's it's a very good proposal, and it's one that I would definitely support, and I'm quite sure my party would support because of our goals to protect things like the aid budgets, to make sure that we are helping these people who are in absolute poverty around the world. These people that, you know, in the education, providing better education means that we provide better trade partners for our future. I want to be in a world where, you're dealing with the Trudeaus of the world, the Obamas of the world, not the Assads of the world. And this is what education does. It builds people to bring in community because they learn about the world around them. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. It would be something that I would support, and I'm quite sure it would be something that my party would support.
Thanks very much, Nick Belfit, for the Liberal Democrats. On to Conservative Bob Seeley.
Thanks, Julie. That's an important and moral question. From my time in Afghanistan and my time in Iraq, I have seen that if you get...
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just ask Kelly if she wouldn't mind just restarting there. We had a slight technical failure with our super-duper iPad machine. Kelly will give me the nod, and then we will have our full minute. No pressure, Kelly. There we go. Bob, over to you. I'll give you a couple of seconds at the end there.
No worries. Thank you very much indeed for the question. An important and moral one. I've seen from my time in Iraq and Afghanistan that if you get young men in work and young women into education, you stabilise a society. So it's really critical. I have to say that the way that we spend money in the Foreign Office Defence IFID needs to be worked at and improved. And I've seen it from the inside that it does often work. And sometimes we spend money on targets. And we were having a conversation in the break, and I mentioned, and I'll repeat it to everyone else here, a friend of mine is an academic who travels around the Arab world, reported DFID to the Serious Fraud Office for misspending nearly £200 million in one country in 1 year on effectively fake schemes. So the important thing is not just to spend the money, but actually much more importantly, to spend the money and making sure that you're delivering some kind of ethical effect, because otherwise that money can be done to harm that society and harm us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Darryl Pitcher.
Yes, thank you for the question. And obviously, education across the world is vitally important. But I echo what Bob said about the international aid budget. It quite delivers the outcomes that we really and it becomes even more difficult to justify it when we're talking about other issues tonight, such as adult social care, funding for schools and funding for the NHS. And you think to yourself, exactly where do we do this? How do we do this slightly differently? And I believe that the key is in the new trade deals that we will be able to do with all of these developing countries, whereby we can stimulate their economies and use the stimulation for their economies so that they can afford to train their own people. It's important that we then put the pressure on them so that they do spend the money in that way. But at the end of the day, if the old adage is, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. And I think that's very important.
Daryl, thank you very much indeed for UKIP. Daryl Pitcher. Next to answer, Vic Slouthian for the Green Party.
This inequality in our world is criminal. It's not just a matter of fair trade, it's a matter of education, and it's also a matter of climate justice. And we're looking at how we're going to keep the temperature down by 1.52 degrees by the end of the century. And when you elect an MP, you're not just electing somebody to represent the island in Westminster, because those MPs in Westminster represent our country abroad. And we have to recognise how privileged we are in the West. They see us as the fifth, or is it the sixth, strongest economy in the world. And we, at the moment, give 0.7% in that international aid. Now, of course, we hear stories when that aid is spent well, it's not spent fairly. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't send it. We, as a party, would raise that level from 0.7 to 1%. Because it's the best thing to do, it's the moral thing to do, and it helps keep us secure abroad. It's good foreign policy.
Thank you, Vix. And we just finally move on to Julian on this one.
Okay, the danger of a question like this is that everyone just tells you the same thing. It's all motherhood and apple pie. I'm going to say two things. Firstly, I'm absolutely certain that some foreign aid gets wasted. But the answer to that is to stop it being wasted, not to stop sending it, which I think is a bit of a difference from the UKIP position. The second thing I'd say is, like a doctor, first do no harm. How much of the problems that we are trying to fix with our aid budget are problems which actually we have contributed to? How many of those problems, to be grammatically correct, how many of those problems, such as deforestation, climate change, which are affecting those countries, are actually our fault? And we're not doing much of them, frankly. How much of it is about the behaviour of our big companies from the West, from countries like Hirica, which are exploiting the locals? I think we need to make sure that our own vision is clear before we just feel better about ourselves for bunging a bit of aid in their direction.
OK then, Les, Julian, Critchley, the last two answer there. We're not going to go back for some debate on this one, just so that we get through a few more questions. But Treve, I'm going to come back to you. What did you think of that?
I'd just like to thank you for your comments. Yeah, highlight the fact that this is an important thing we need to be looking into, and you need to be supporting me and my fellow colleague in this campaign. So just thank you, Willie.
Thank you, Treve.
Treve. So I've got here your campaign champion for 2017. Just explain that to me, if you will, quickly. I
went through a series, you could say it was similar to an interview, and there's 20 of us in the entire UK, and I was chosen to an interview, and then I was sent out to a training routine, you could say camp, really, in Loughborough, where I was taught ideas such as talking to MPs, trying to get support, things like that. Our aim to get more money into foreign education, all those things, but it's like, there's only 20 of us, so this is a great opportunity for us to make a massive difference in our world. So it's something we really do need to support and make a difference with. So just thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Treve. Very worthwhile thing you're doing.